and welcome to another all-star Star Wars Minute. It's your daily podcast in which we analyze, scrutinize, and celebrate The Last Jedi, one chaotic minute at a time. I'm Alex Robinson from alexrobinson.fun.
I'm Pete the Retailer from PeteTheRetailer.com.
Should I introduce myself?
Please.
Is this a good time? Oh, wow. Wow. Oh, geez. I am Noah Segan from, some movies, a little bit of television. I live in LA. I'm from New York. I'm on the internet sometimes. Hi.
Hi.
Welcome, Noah, as our all-star guest commentator for minute number 29.
Hell of a minute. Truly a lot going on in this minute. Present company, meaning myself included.
Well, minute number 29 starts with Finn telling Poe that the First Order has them. And it ends 60 seconds later with Kylo Ren spinning his TIE fighter, just like his grandfather Darth Vader.
It's true. Spinning is a good trick still.
Who doesn't like a spin?
Exactly.
Who doesn't like a spin in a TIE fighter? Yeah, man. It's a lot going on. We rally the troops, so to speak. There's the most furtive, loaded look between two characters in a Star Wars film ever, between Stomeroni Starck, of course, and Lieutenant Talindra. The greatest will they won't they since Moonlighting, frankly.
Exactly. There's so much there that I was so backing up a second. So your character, Stomeroni Starck, what's his deal? That's we see bits and pieces of him, but what's his deal? I feel like we get a little bit, we get hints.
His deal is that Ryan made a Faustian bargain at some point in his life that required me to be in all of his movies, and so I got to come and get dressed up in the same costume I wore for Halloween when I was 8 years old, and live the dream.
That's awesome.
That's the gist of it. No, I mean, I would not have authorized the making of episode 8 if I wasn't able to slide in there. I would have just put a red light on the entire production.
Or at least cursed it somehow, that it would have
somehow, yeah. I would have quelched the entire thing. No, Ryan in his never-ending generosity and team spirit, he tries to bring along as many of the family as he can, and very graciously invited me to play the role of Stomeroni Starck. Starck being named after his uncle, which is like, I mean, how cool is it that there's a real person out there named Starck? It's like the coolest name in the world.
It is. And
Stomeroni was I forget how we got to Stomeroni, but I think it was that we at some point we joked that Poe that this was like Poe's up brother. Like this was like a guy who could never be like the hero. And then somehow that got, I feel like I was having a conversation with Ryan and with Pablo Hidalgo, who's one of the story area people at Lucasfilm, who's a close friend of Ryan's, obviously now a close friend of mine. And we were joking and we said, well, wouldn't it be funny if his name was Stowe instead of Poe? And then somehow that devolved into Stomeroni, which I think just, sounds like a funny name from
Totally.
From a Star Wars world. And that's how we got to the name. And, and then through the magic of editing, created some sort of friendship between Tally and Stowe.
I like that you went into it with that backstory and all this kind of, it seems like you really approached the character from the inside out. I feel like too many times, when we're doing this show, we're like, "Oh, look at that character there. Let's find out who that is." And it turns out it's this like unnamed rebel officer. And I'm like, "Come on,
Right.
you guys! Like, this is the most famous canvas in the world, and now you're just, oh yeah, whatever. We'll just
Well,
name this character."
I mean, I'll tell you, it's like, it's not like I didn't, I schlepped out to England
Right.
to go do the, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I schlepped out to the, yeah, I realized I schlepped to a galaxy far, far away. And so why not, do your job? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like and also it's like when your job is like, I get to dress up and play pretend, there's not really a downside to leaning into it. So that was definitely part, and I'm hoping that my commitment to it really leads to the spin-off opportunities that that the character deserves.
Well,
You never know.
Yeah, that was going to be a question I had. Like, do you keep tabs on your character and see what much smaller level? I have there's a character from, not to belittle her, but there's a character kind of named in my honor that appeared in the comics, and I'm always keeping tabs on her. I have like a Google alert. I'm like, oh, let me know what's going on with Pete D'Iritalia. Like, or does she have another appearance yet? No, like she's just kind of referencing these two things, but I'm fingers crossed. And there's a couple of like, one or two blips of fan fiction that have popped up, and I'm like, all right, like I'm totally invested in her. So have you followed Stomeroni Starck's?
Well, I don't want to spoil the next minute of the movie for you guys,
Okay.
but
Something happens.
It could go either way.
Okay.
I don't know if we need to. But listen, it's Star Wars, so if you don't see a body, I mean, we've seen this before. This is
Come back as spider legs Maroni.
Exactly. I mean, we have the technology, we can rebuild him. So, but
fingers crossed.
Yeah.
There's always room for
crossed.
prequels too. That's it's Star Wars, so you can always go back and tell like a teenage Stomeroni Starck and how what his, or go back and tell the fill in this this kind of will they won't they with Tally. Talk a little bit about that. Have a little, maybe even make it a rom-com. Have a meet cute in the hangar.
Yeah. Where's the kitchen sink dramedy between these two characters?
They're both invested in their careers, but they also care for each other, and they can't work. They're trying to work it out there. I'm digging this. I'll go see it.
It'll be interesting to see because Rian Johnson is still supposedly going to be doing a Star Wars trilogy in the future, correct? So if that was the case and he brought you back, would you have to be like a relative of him, or would you? Yeah, I guess it depends on what the trilogy's about. Speaking of which, what is Rian Johnson's trilogy about? You must have some inside information.
I haven't spoken to Ryan in years, and
fair enough.
I mean, it's very awkward because we actually made a movie since then, but he just he won't look me in the eye, won't take my calls. It's all very strange.
It's just like, contractually you have to be there, but he's not going to be happy about it.
He doesn't like it. He really does not. He's not happy about it. Listen, guys, all I can do is, glue his fingers to the keyboard. I can't decide what he does with them from there.
Yeah,
exactly. Well, while we're here kind of focused mainly on this minute, but there are a few, when we were first talking, I was like, well, do you want to do the kind of troop transport thing or the cockpit? Like you pop up a couple of times before this.
I do pop up a few times, and I think depending on which version of which draft of the movie we were to look at, I don't know if Stark had more or less to do, but we ended up with I think there's three solid shots with Stomeroni himself on there. This one, of course, has the furtive and intense look between he and Tali, and the bang on the cockpit door. Let me tell you guys something. I don't know if anybody has ever touched on this, but most of the vehicles are in some way fully functional, right? That they have on stage there. So, there will be, the switches work and light up, and, there's buttons that, kind of like respond to touch. And of course, now there are screens that have animations and things on them in order to, kind of, get you in the mood or look correct on the screen, unless they decide to change them later in post. And of course, in the various wings, your X-wings, your A-wings, there are the cockpits are fully functional. They go up and down on their own, and obviously controlled by a very experienced operators of these devices. I guess they're a plane. I don't know. Anyway, they
vehicle.
So, but here's what's so interesting, right? Is that the cockpits won't go up or down unless you, the actor, the person inside, is holding a switch with both hands under the seat.
Wow.
And I can only imagine that is because somebody caught their finger in a cockpit door in 1978, and they said, yeah, exactly. Hopefully nobody lost a digit, but or it was just really smart thinking that they decided to do that before someone lost a digit. So the banging on the cockpit door, was a man. That was a huge move for me, because I had to hold that switch, and then the cockpit door went down, and then I banged on it. Of course, you don't see that because they only cut to me banging on the closed door. But I'm just giving you guys the whole, what you didn't see, which was quite a move.
You managed to hold both. Did you put one hand on each switch still, or you managed to hold both with one hand?
I think I think there's a switch on either side of the seat that you have to hold. Again, so that, both of your hands are accounted for, so to speak.
Right. So keep your head and arms inside the X-Wing at all times.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah, yeah.
Are they pretty solidly built?
Yes. Although I will tell you guys that that when the Falcon is obviously, because it's a stage, it's modular, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, they can take it apart and they can sort of put it back together again, but it can all fit together in the sense that, like, you can walk onto a stage, walk up a gangplank, and you're like in the Falcon, and it's all put together and everything is where you think it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I visited before we shot, that's what the Falcon was actually all together, and it was just on a stage. Sitting there, and I got to go and you walk up the gangplank to the Millennium Falcon, you're like, oh, this is it. Everything is where it should be. Like, that's where you play chess, and that's where you go to the turret, and the turret is where you think the turret should be, and everything is exactly like it's a very surreal moment. Anyway, the cockpit obviously is where you think the cockpit is, and you walk and you say, can I sit in the cockpit? And your friend, who's the producer of the movie, is like, yeah, I guess you can. And you sit in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon, and obviously I think that the original set for the Falcon was destroyed, and that they had to rebuild. You guys probably know when they rebuilt. When did they rebuild it? Did they rebuild it during the original trilogy, or was it lost after the original trilogy and this was a rebuild?
As far as I can tell, I think it's both. I think they rebuilt it for Empire because they were doing a lot more in it, as far as I can remember, because they needed more room for people to walk around and hug and kiss and stuff in it. But Then I think for the new, in between in the ensuing years, I think most of it got lost or destroyed. I could be wrong. Everybody's yelling at me now listening to this podcast at home, but
yeah, because I guess my point was that a lot of this stuff, as everybody knows, the lightsabers are the handles from a Speed Graphics camera, and they are still like going out and finding the handles to Speed Graphics cameras in order to build new lightsabers for these movies. And so I think to that end, when you sit in the cockpit of the Falcon, you're like, the switches and the buttons and stuff are not like the new version of it. It's like somebody went out and found like an old ass switch and put it in, and then you flick this old, you're like, all right, I guess I'm sitting in this kind of like crusty seat that's like, it's supposed to be crusty, like, and you're like, I guess that I'm holding on to this like weird, this weird, steering wheel yoke thing that like feels old and rickety, like it all, and it's not, I'm sure a huge amount of it is this sort of like Imagineering, immersive thing that, that these people who design and put this stuff together, it's like they're the best people in the world at this job. But I think it's also that the really is old. And like, they really are like, it's like they found whatever they could from the original and then they rebuilt it. And then they went online or went to a junkyard and found something that matches exactly. So I guess the point is that it's like I guess to answer your question in the longest possible way that I can answer this question, it all does. Yes. It's like, it all does feel like weirdly like authentic and old and like, kind of like, does this work? Like it, and
will I be going to hyperspace if I touch this?
Yeah, exactly. Like you're like, wait, this does feel like a thing. Yeah, that works.
Nice.
So as the only person I know who has been in the actual theatrical Millennium Falcon, I have to ask, what does it smell like?
It smells musty, yo. That's what I'm trying to say.
All right, well,
it smells like it's been in storage since the 80s.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, well, this one had already, it had already been in a movie since
right.
Force Awakens, obviously. But it felt like, I have an old muscle car. Like that's like, it's like, and it kind of, it runs, but it's like the seats are cracked and, half the gauges don't work. And, it's like a cool old thing in my garage. And that's what the Falcon felt like. Like it felt like an old machine that worked. And it was funny because I did get to sit in it. The seats are really tiny. Like I'm like, the seats are like, Harrison Ford must have a very toned buttocks and it's funny because both the seats are the same size, and I'm like, this doesn't track because these two guys are, poor
Jonas.
Jonas, yeah. Poor Jonas, because we're talking like, I'm a short guy and I was cramped in there. I don't know, maybe they adjust the seat for Jonas. But
yeah, you got to reach underneath. It's a little thing, and
it's a little tab. Yeah, I wouldn't put it past them. I'm sure they could do it. They could engineer that. But I remember sitting in it and being like, can I sit in the cockpit? Yes, I can sit in the cockpit. Okay. Can I touch it? Yes. Can I touch it? Yes. And then I just remember sitting there and like touching the yoke or whatever you call I don't know, is that the term for the steering wheel on a spaceship? Is like, I remember kind of lightly, steering it and playing pretend and like my eyes welling up. And then my friend Leo, who was one of the producers who we still work with, he came, I didn't know him at the time very well. He came back And he said, all right, you ready to see, some more of the, give you more of the tour? And I said, no, just another few minutes. And he said, he's British. He said, mate, you've been here for 35 minutes. And I was like, and I had gone into like a fugue state of of enjoying my time in the Falcon.
That's awesome. Well, that was going to be another question. Is like, did it take away any of the magic being able to kind of, knowing how the sausage is made? But it seems like it added to the magic that you're like,
no,
you got to play in Magic Land.
It was a huge. It was a huge opportunity to play in Magic Land, and no, it does not take away any of the magic. It's like you are, because the scope of what they are doing is so big, it automatically is super immersive. You know what I mean? Like it's like they like. I'm sure it was different on the original film, at least, if not at least the first two. There's moments when you're like, when you're in the hangar where you're like, this is a gigantic stage and they have like 30 vehicles and there are like 300 people all dressed perfectly, and there are aliens whose facial expressions are being controlled either by themselves within the mask or by people who are like off-site enough that you never see the guy controlling the guy's face. You know what I mean? So you just think that this like alien person is just sitting there smiling at you because you can't see that there's like wirelessly like 100 yards away somebody controlling the guy's face, and it's like the most so it's like there is something like incredibly immersive about it that I think can only be done at that scale.
It's sort of the opposite of what we used to hear about the prequels, is that everyone was just in front of green screens all day long. And this sounds like it was the opposite, where, you could really feel like you were in this, off-world environment.
Absolutely. And I mean, everybody I think is, there's been so much, excuse me, there's been so much discussed about all the various BB-8s, right? Because there's like the BB-8 device that was radio controlled, but then everybody has seen all the all the footage of BB-8 being controlled by the gentleman in the green suit, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've all seen that, and he's on a green stick, and that's obviously painted out. But even that is like it's still so, it's like it didn't feel like out of place. It didn't feel anachronistic because there's still somebody like controlling this droid. And, and it was, frankly, it was sparse. It was like you walk onto these sets and like I said, it's like there's buttons that are lighting up and there's screens on the wall, and it all nothing. Yeah, it wasn't like there's a big green blob right there. It really was legit.
Wow. That's awesome. That's, from what I understand, it's the Muppets are kind of like that too. That like people interacting with Muppets immediately forget that it's a puppet, and they're like the characters come to life enough that they just can talk directly to the Muppets, and they get immersed in that world.
Yeah, I've heard that too. I've heard that I don't know what you would, the Muppeteers, because it is sort of like an elevated version of puppeteering, because there is that immersive quality, because there's that interaction that has to be kind of believable, right? So it's like, yeah, I've heard that, and it did even go that far, like I said, where you would see actors who had on full alien makeup and prosthetics, and some of it is controlled remotely. And so you literally you could have an interaction with a person who's half of their facial expressions are being controlled by somebody who you don't even see. You don't even know where they are, and it's like it's incredible.
I wish I had that, someone else who was controlling my facial expressions, so I didn't have to think at all about how people reacted to me.
Just wait until you see the video, Alex.
Wait a minute. Have you been to Galaxy's Edge? How does that Millennium Falcon compare with the real Millennium Falcon?
I haven't been to Galaxy's Edge, guys. It opened. When did it open? I feel like it opened right around when I had a kid, and I was it 2017, 2018, 2017, 2017? Yeah, I don't know, but I have not had an opportunity to go, and
probably
I would
shouldn't.
very much like to. I shouldn't go.
Well, don't go now.
Well, just because yeah, don't go now, but just because of you've been on the real Millennium Falcon. Like you're going to be there and be like, oh, this is like, it's like being in a giant toy.
Gonna walk through the whole Galaxy's Edge being like, that's not real. That's not like that.
Pulling people aside. I should start pulling people aside and say, damn, this isn't. Let me tell you all the things you did wrong. Just really try to ruin people's fun.
Right. And the cast member, the people are just like, oh, dude, I just work here. Like,
yeah,
just,
please,
you're holding up the line.
Sir, this is a Wendy's.
Yeah.
Well, so did you kind of touched upon it for a second, but you did grow up a Star Wars guy? I mean, it's hard not to a certain extent if you're around our collective age, but was it your thing?
I'm 23, so
Okay.
Yes, no, I did. I grew up obviously I grew up a Star Wars fan because of the generational connection, and then sort of to boot, I have a brother who is 9.5 years older than me, so he was like, so he was a little too little for the first movie, but I would bet any amount of money that at least he saw Jedi in the theaters. And he was a huge influence on me. He's a big sci-fi guy and a major sci-fi fantasy reader and collector and all of that. So that was a huge influence on me, was to just be like him and be into the stuff that he was into, in conjunction with the sort of inescapable impact of, by the time I was a adult in the, not adult, but by the time I was old enough to like something, let's say in the late 80s or early 90s, it was such a big part of our lives. And then, I think a lot of people, especially these days, kind of with the attention that's brought on event movies and franchises, the lead up, like the multi-year lead up to the prequels, was so huge, right?
Yeah.
It was, there was like years where we were like freaking out over what the prequels were and how they were going to get made and who was going to be in them. And so there was this anticipation that was like kind of, I don't know. It was nothing like I had ever, or probably ever since, really felt. So that was a huge impact as well, just waiting for the prequels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I found not too long ago, I found some old magazines from before that were like, all kinds of speculation about stuff. And I'm like, oh, wow, we were really, really just grasping at anything at this point. It's like a magazine that came out like a year or two before the movie. And it was just, like these wild speculations about stuff. And I totally ate it up at the time. So it was this kind of culturally this giant, like, oh, we're going to have this. And then I think that there's no way that it could have lived up to that hype for everybody. I think that's.
Well, I think like just even like the news that Anakin was going to be a little kid, right?
Yeah.
And like what that meant for little kids, right? Little kids who had played adults, you grow up playing adult characters, and then somebody says, "Wait a minute, now we're going to make a little kid character the protagonist." And I think that was like a huge thing for a lot of little kids, was like, oh, and of course, who's putting together that, no, wait, this is a bad guy. This becomes, I was young enough to not put together that I was impressed that there was a little kid starring in this movie who is not the hero eventually. You know what I mean? Revisiting all the prequels now, and like getting really into like all of this, kind of political, like civics lesson that is the prequels. All of that was lost on me.
Yeah.
Which is probably the way that it was, constructed. It's like, kids should enjoy it, and then I don't know, were the politics and the civics like there for us, for the grown-ups to kind of go back and enjoy? I'm not sure, but it's I don't know.
Adults love movies about the taxation of trade routes. I know that. So, Noah, anything else you any other big startling revelations you want to get off your chest about The Last Jedi?
I mean, I could go on and on about. I'll tell you guys another. This is more backstage stuff, but tour. The tour that I got, the same event where I got to sit in the cockpit of the Falcon. Eventually, the tour took us to the one of the costume departments, and there was a Chewie on a mannequin, like the outer portion of Chewbacca being hung on a mannequin, right? Like, so
like his skin, like someone had skinned him?
it was like it was like if you took a bearskin rug and sort of draped it over so it was Chewie sized, but there wasn't a person in it. It was designed obviously for a person to get in, and I remember saying, much like with the Falcon, like, can I touch it? Like, can I? And it was way too big to put on. So I was like, can I touch it? Yes. And I go over to touch it, and something much like my experience with the Falcon came over me, and I hugged it. And then I kind of caught myself hugging it, and I looked back to. He said, "Everybody hugs it."
Oh. I was just saying, mate, you've been hugging that thing for 35 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was one of those. Yeah, please get off of the Chewie. But it was nice. It was nice to know. It was nice to know that. And there were a lot of that. There was a lot of this sort of sense throughout. Both the short period of time that I was shooting, which I was on set for, I don't know, a week, a few days, and through the tour. There was always this sense amongst everybody that this was our kid dream come true. And that was something, I don't feel uncomfortable saying this about Ryan. I remember very early in the process talking with him about the movie, and this is I think even before he started working on the story, on anything in substance, but just the concept of sort of like this is the text, this is the thing that connects us to kind of our earliest memories of like storytelling and playing pretend and immersiveness and kind of wanting to believe in something that like is a long time ago and far, far away. You know what I mean? And it really kind of keys into this very primal, childhood experience. And what's incredible is that it felt that way. Everybody seemed to feel that way. People who were like putting feathers on porgs felt that way. And I think that that's kind of one of the things that makes people so passionate about this, is that everybody does have this kind of unifying respect and love for this, not because of this macro impact, but because of the micro impact, but because of like how much personally it connects to us.
Yeah.
Playing pretend.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. It's, I wonder if there's a certain, I don't know. Every once in a while, I'm concerned that it's like, the kids are going to be like, okay, Grandpa, yeah, we got it. You like Star Wars, but like the impact on again, not to lump us all together, but the impact on people, kids growing up in that, kind of 70s, 80s into the 90s, like it's hard to pin down, hard to explain fully culturally, and so I'm glad there's this. I'm glad there's this extended bit. My kids seem totally into it, so they like all these movies. So I'm happy it's at least.
How old are your kids?
As of this recording, I've got a 3 and a 6.
And so I have a 3.5, and then I have a little. He's like just barely not a potato. So he's like 10 months old.
I think I saw him in the asteroid field.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's floating around somewhere. But the 6-year-old is. I mean, what is it like to have a kid who is, sorry to turn this around on you, Pete, but
it's a parenting podcast now.
What is it like to have because I do, and maybe this is controversial of me to say, but I do feel like first and foremost, these are, Star Wars and Wu-Tang are for the children. And I do feel like, the best thing we can do is sort of like protect this experience that we had for our kids, as opposed to do things that just satisfy what we want. It's like, no, we have to think of the children.
Right.
Won't somebody think of the children? But I guess so. The question is at 6 years old, like, does a 6-year-old today, considering what's going on, considering how many awesome like movies and franchises and heroes and opportunities there are that are out there for kids to like, and also just like attention span, all that stuff, like does a 6-year, like what is, like, do you feel like your 6-year-old is having the same experience that you had at 6, or is it a completely different lens because 6-year-olds today are so different than 6-year-olds, 30 years ago?
Raised by a father who loved Star Wars.
Right.
Our parents growing up didn't have any opinion on Star Wars. So
my parents were vaguely positive about it. They encouraged me certainly, but they weren't obviously, as
but it wasn't in their DNA the way Star Wars is.
Right.
Like with you.
So, but I've been really cautious not to be like, you have to like this and like, make it too much of a big thing. For them, it's just always around, and they can absorb it, and we lots of ancillary materials. They love the, talk
about the toys.
No, I was going to say oddly, the 3-year-old is more into. We got the full set of the Skywalker Saga Golden Books, and he's just totally into that, the storyline, the whole thing. Just like always wants to kind of pick up a different one and read that one, and my daughter, who's 6, is into it, but she also has, her interests are there are so many more things that I don't think it exactly matches. I feel like I went in stages. Like I was all about Star Wars, and then I was all about G.I. Joe, and then I went through, a couple of different. Star Wars is always there, but it was like a, definitely a peak, and then it kind of waned a tiny bit. But I feel like she's got things all over the place. She's really into the Disney, princess movies and the Star Wars stuff and some of the Marvel stuff. We haven't really watched any of the movies, but the characters and stories, and, there's enough.
She's into a range of IP.
Exactly. Yeah. She's her portfolio is diversified. So she's got, there's enough cutesy, not in a bad way, but like kind of, kid safe appearances of all kinds of different things that she's totally absorbed. Like my kids know a lot of Marvel stuff. They haven't watched any of the actual MCU movies, but there's enough, shorts and little, clips and stuff like that online that they can watch and get into, that they love the concepts and the characters, but maybe not the actual thing. I'm hoping that it won't be the type of thing once they actually sit down and watch like a Marvel movie. We watch most of the Star Wars movies so far with them. They like them all, but I don't know. I think eventually we'll sit down and watch a Marvel movie and be like, oh, that's it? What happened to all the, like, where's all the other things that I liked from, the stupid little things from the shorts? But yeah, again, long-winded answer to say like they're into it, but it probably isn't the same because there is so much stuff. Although my 3-year-old, if you ask him, I don't think there's anything other than Star Wars or Spider-Man right now. He's
right.
That's all he. Anything turns into a lightsaber or a web shooter, like so.
I love to hear it. Yeah, I feel like the sort of ongoing dynastic saga is it's very, very hard to articulate how impactful that will be before you can share it. And now there is so much to share, right? Because again, when we were kids, it was like there's 3 movies, and that's a lot of movies. To a little kid, 3 movies is a lot of movies. But now, especially because of the way that not only Star Wars, but most sort of sci-fi fantasy franchises have kind of expanded, it's like you said, there's this world that is like, where do you even start? You know what I mean? Like, and it does sort of continue, which I love. And that's why, when I was a little kid, that's part of why I loved horror movies. It's like why, I was watching horror movies when I was probably too little to watch horror movies, was because there were franchises that had 4, 5, 6, 7 entries, and you could sort of continue the story. And that was a rarer bird than it is today. So I'm sort of interested to kind of see like how our kids' generation kind of responds to this, never-ending waterfall of world. And I'm hoping that they do, because she's got to make it through 8 movies before she sees me.
Put it in the proper context, just when you're appearing. Yeah,
right.
That makes sense.
You're gonna not tell her and then have her be totally surprised.
knowing her at that point, she'll be like in front of 8 other screens, like managing some sort of empire herself by the time I show up.
And by then you'll be able to put anyone you want in any movie, with deep fakes and stuff. So it won't really.
Yeah, she won't be impressed at all.
Won't be
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else, Pete? Anything else?
No. Well, I know you hinted that Stomeroni Starck he might not be long for this, but I also real quick wanted to ask if there's anything we should keep an eye out for later in the movie. You mentioned because you've got the behind the scenes look. You mentioned there's the whole family kind of comes along for stuff. Is there anybody we should be looking out for? Anything sneaky?
Oh, I mean, there's a couple. I don't know. There's definitely a couple other. There's definitely a couple other cameos. I know that at some point, and I don't know if this shot made it in, but there is a shot in a jail cell where there is a lanky figure in the background in repose, and the lanky figure is none other than Mr. Nathan Johnson, who is Ryan's cousin and the composer of all of the music, with, of course, exception to this movie, which was composed by a young up-and-coming composer that Ryan gave a shot to, who I think he did a great job. I really think that this new guy's going places.
Yeah.
But there is a shot, and it might end up being a leg or something like that, but it is Nathan in the background there.
Cool.
So keep an eye out when we.
All right, lanky prisoner.
Lanky prisoner, Nathan Johnson. Yes, guys. Well, this has been a pleasure to come back and talk to you guys again, and I hope to do it a third time. I'm looking to it's like Saturday Night Live. I'm looking to join the 5 Timers Club.
Oh yeah, it's quite a lounge. You gotta. I can't wait. You're welcome anytime.
I hope I get like a novelty varsity jacket or something. I don't know. I don't know what kind of merch you guys have. But,
we have mouse pads and
koozies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Noah, and thank you, Pete, for co-hosting, and thank you, listener, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow on another All-Star Star Wars Minute.